Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program the co-host of the Politics of Everything contributing editor at the New Republic, Alex Pareene. Hello, Alex. It's been a long time since you and I seen each other because I think at one point I had COVID and then I was sick or whatever it was. I don't know what.
I just assumed you were mad at me.
So. I mean, I blamed you for my COVID.
Yeah, no,
we hadn't seen each other, but I thought it was quite a coincidence. So let's, but it's great to catch up. It's been a sort of a crazy week. I had totally forgotten that we had a new senator appointed at the beginning of the week, and I don't even know if we're going to get to that.
Yeah,
I don't even. Like that was this week, right? I like.
This is like as Donald Trump gets closer to the center of like the actual politics that are going on, the more this is happening. I think I get the sense that we're getting back into that phase, which is terrifying to me. Mm-hmm. But let's start with that. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Kevin McCarthy is no longer Speaker of the House, and
right.
It is. I mean, I think there was a sense that was sort of inevitable 9 months ago. I think there were people who were surprised that he lasted that long.
Yeah.
They have done nothing. I mean, even on the sort of like
speaker, they did that.
Well, they've done that, but they did nothing. Like even in like the committee hearings and stuff on like that, nothing. Yeah. Nothing sort of like stuck on some level. I don't know. Give me your sense of like what we just witnessed this week, anyways, and then we'll talk about where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because it was. Like on the one hand, just a completely bizarre thing to happen, a bizarre week, historically, practically unprecedented. But then, as you say, this is kind of an ending I feel like I could have predicted a few months ago, right? Like we could have seen an ending approximately like this. And what has been notable is really just like how little, it's not just how little they accomplished, because there was not really any hope of them accomplishing anything, but it's kind of like you said, like even just how little noise that this majority has made, like what they've, like how little they've done in general in terms of, steering the national conversation or manufacturing scandal or anything like that. Like it's just been a huge waste of time for everyone, essentially, ending now in this sort of really absurd situation. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's an impossible. I mean, obviously it's an impossible job, but I have no clue what can possibly happen next with these dynamics.
What's fascinating is, and maybe, maybe I have the incentive structure wrong here, and maybe something's changed, but if you think back to the last Congress, Pelosi had similar margin of error, essentially, right? 5 votes maybe to waste. And there was trillions of dollars in spending that were passed. There was, I guess an impeachment early on I forgot about that, but there was an impeachment that took place in the wake of January 6th. There was, a lot of stuff got done within that margin. Now, maybe because you did have the Senate, and it made the importance of passing things that much more urgent, right? Like there was a consequence to passing legislation in the House. And obviously the past 9 months, there hasn't been, but it seems to me that could cut both ways. Like, it's really just like, you pass stuff in the House, even if it's not going to pass in the Senate, so you can create these statements. They've done very little of that, but really it's this sort of like inability to use what control they had of like these oversight committees to create any type of narrative. There is so many different incentive structures for the Republicans, and in part because they really don't want to do anything. And they're freed from that. I mean, as conservatives, fundamentally, they see government as a problem. So they always seem to have this problem when they're in power. I mean, this is
doing government.
Yeah, well, honestly, this is like the sixth Speaker of the House in the past 20 years, maybe more, maybe, I mean, or I should say sixth Republican, leader, I should say, in the House, maybe more for that matter. I mean, it's literally, we're on the brink of the second wrestling coach responsible for the molestation of kids or of wrestlers. I mean, that's pretty impressive in 2 decades.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think once that glass ceiling is shattered, of course, it gets easier for the next one.
Exactly.
That's true.
So,
that's true. That's true.
But yeah, I don't know. It's funny because there obviously are the incentives when you don't have the White House and you don't have unified control of Congress. Yeah, like you have less incentive to have a positive agenda, less incentive to do stuff. But I mean, it's at this point, it's just a reflection of a lack of any sort of agenda, though, because I think that you could say, however chaotic and however nihilistic Republican majorities have been in the past, they've had some sort of agenda they wanted to implement. And it's really hard to even understand what that would be in the current regime, the agenda besides besides reinstalling Trump and like just like sort of ending democracy. But there isn't really an agenda besides that. Like they don't have a thing they want to do with power that I can sort of point to and say, here's what they would like to do. Besides the sort of like authoritarian culture war stuff that they want, that they can sort of accomplish at the state level or with the judiciary.
I mean, what you've just said would, I think, in any other circumstance, be considered a little bit facile, or facile, if you will, except for the fact that they literally have no party platform.
No,
like the last time around, they literally just said
whatever Trump says. Yeah,
we're with Trump.
We don't really care. Yeah.
I mean, the Ukraine stuff is really the only thing that they're kind of coalescing behind, but they're not coalescing.
The vast majority of the Republicans
want it. They're just, those are the ones being silent right now. I mean, like there is, I think, some effort by some, like the Gates faction or whatever, to make this more of a thing. But the Republican Party is always going to line up behind more funding for like their donors or whatever, or more contracts, I should say, for their donors, like the military, like the Boeing or whatever. They want more military funding as well. So like they're eventually, I think that Ukraine funding will get passed. But the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden impeachment thing, that's what they're trying to make politically salient. And it's actually actively terrible and might be hurting them. I would say hurting them more than helping them, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's been, I would agree with your assessment, Emma, where I think that the politics of it are like not actually good for them, but they're kind of just stuck on this road. We're seeing like, I think this paralysis is partly just because they like you say, there's always been this sort of tension between what the sort of donor class wants and what the populist grassroots wants. But no one's like steering the boat right now, it feels like to me, right? So even on this like Ukraine stuff, it just seems like no one's like at the tiller. And I think we're just seeing like we're really just seeing flailing, like sort of as a result. Like it's not even a sort of coherent war for the soul of the Republican Party. It's just kind of a bunch of people with agendas that are mainly personal out for themselves.
Yeah, it is amazing how like sort of the Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene thing has sort of, got pushed off the front page, if you will, because now everybody hates Gates, and they're also like coming after Nancy Mace now, because which, I'm all for. But let's talk about now on Tuesday. There's going to be, which is amazing to me, there is going to be a quasi debate on Fox between Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan as to who is going to be Speaker of the House. And what's going to be fascinating is their competing visions for what the Republican Party is. They're going to say the exact same things.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only thing that Jim Jordan's going to say is that I'm endorsed by Donald Trump. And Steve Scalise, I doubt he's going to come in and do a redux of I am, KKK without the baggage.
And I mean, Jordan will try to differentiate himself by being one of the founding members of the Freedom Caucus, right? I mean, also, can he tout that Trump endorsement? Because Trump is publicly like winking and saying, I might want to come in and be speaker.
I think the sequencing is that he was thinking about it for a couple of days. And now it's saying
sounds like a lot of work.
It does sound like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, there's two big issues, right? It seems to me. One is, what are the implications for the budget stuff? Like everything else after that is largely irrelevant because there's no reason to believe they're going to be any more effective without Kevin McCarthy than they were with. The only question is like, and I don't think Kevin McCarthy would have made I think there would have been a government shutdown regardless with Kevin McCarthy. There was, it was just a matter of time. Like it was coming to a head.
Yeah.
But it's not inconceivable to me that we could get like an extended government shutdown, a really long extended one, short of, Sarah Nelson and the flight attendant union or somebody, similarly situated, who come in and basically say, we're not going to do this anymore and put some pressure on those people. But that's one part about it. The one big question is the government shutdown. And the second one is, how many seats is this going to cost the Republicans in 2024?
Yeah.
And how many more would have been cost? Like, I think if Donald Trump actually became Speaker of the House for anything more than like a day, it would add 3 points to Joe Biden's, numbers. I mean, that may be a slight exaggeration, but not too much.
Yeah. Good reminder of what it's like to have that guy in government.
Yeah. And we're seeing that again. Like you got to be terrified. Let's play this clip of New York rep in the 19th district, I think it is, of Marcus
Molinaro, yeah.
He is in the 19th district, actually. Like, that's where I vote up there. And he beat, I think it was Josh Riley. It was a very weird, thing that was one of those districts that got caught up in this. It was an off year, and he won as part of this sort of like small, the only place where there was like a red tide, if you will, in New York. Yeah. Here he is, like, this guy is walking a tightrope right now.
Tonight, as this chaos continues, the Republican Congressman Mark Molinaro and Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton. I want to start, though, with Congressman Molinaro. And I should be clear, sir, I know you voted against the effort to oust Speaker Kevin McCarthy, so you wanted him to remain as Speaker. So you just heard Congressman Nels, I'm nominating Donald J. Trump for Speaker, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. President Trump's the right guy for the job. I'd love to see him be Speaker of the House. Do you think former President Trump should become Speaker even on a short-term basis?
Well, that's the way you framed it is a great way of answering it. I understand he's interested in being a short-term Speaker. We have a short-term Speaker. We have an interim Speaker. And I'm committed to finding somebody within the House, the membership of the House, to serve as Speaker of the House. We've got to be focused on governing again. And I think what happened 2 days ago was a mistake. I've said so. I think it's an embarrassment. And frankly, we need, as a conference, Republican majority have to come together behind a candidate who serves in the House, who is committed to governing within the reality. And the reality is we have a divided country and we have a bipartisan government, and we have to function within that reality.
So President Trump, in this context, is coming to Capitol Hill next week ahead of what might be the first of many rounds of votes for Speaker, right? Depending what happens in your party. The day before, he hasn't been on Capitol Hill since the insurrection, when he was obviously nearby. So, do you think that's a good idea that he would come to the Hill? Is it helpful in any way?
I think that the conference has a lot to get through these next few days, and quite frankly, the amount of discussion that we've been having as members is complicated enough. I will say out loud that I've been engaged in these conversations. I think people from different backgrounds, ideological backgrounds within the conference, we all recognize this is a serious moment. This individual, the Speaker of the House, constitutional responsibility, second in line to be President of the United States. This is not a moment where we need any distraction or any undermining of a very serious effort to find the individual who will best enable us to govern. The American people want us fighting inflation. They want us focused on border security. They want us delivering.
All right, we don't need to hear anymore. I mean, the point of this clip is this guy could be talking about anything, anywhere, at any time. He is so nervous of both losing his Trump base, because let's be honest, like, if you're voting for a Republican, you are pro-Trump. I mean, in any district in the country, I mean, almost, like, the majority of your voters are pro-Trump. Yep. And he doesn't want to, screw that up. But he also realizes this guy's in a purple district. Yeah. And he is terrified about what is coming for him. And like, if I'm the Democrats right now, I'm making ads in his district right now saying, "Are you going to vote for Jim Jordan?" I'll talk about the stuff about the wrestling coach, but also this guy's an insurrectionist. This guy is a lunatic. Or are you going to vote for Steve Scalise, who literally said, "I'm David Duke without the baggage"?
Yeah.
I mean, or are you going to vote for Donald Trump? Like, I would just remind people, you're a Republican, and regardless of what you do or say, you are the part of the problem because you enable these people.
Yeah. No. And I think that's exactly the sort of predicament. You described it well of a guy like Molinaro, where you cannot win that seat without hardcore Trump support. But your base of support are the hardcore Trump people in a purple district. And like, you're really damned if you do, damned if you don't in that sort of situation, as we can see as he becomes increasingly sort of mealy-mouthed and scared. Because the options are so abhorrent that it is kind of like you really do just need to go into a place like his district and no matter what happens, just be like these are the people you're enabling. Like, these are the people that this guy's enabling. He wants to say this is about governing, but they have no interest in that.
Yeah, chaos. That's what I was saying earlier with the speaker fighting. Why I'm just bathing in it essentially is because it is just wonderful to have this real-time reminder for the American public ahead of a 2024 election that the Republican Party is the party of chaos, and Donald Trump was the number one chaos agent in that way. And I think that even though I would like the Democrats to have a more coherent vision themselves, that negative partisanship and that reminder is a really, really good thing. Like, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that Trump should be speaker. What a joke. She didn't vote on the motion to vacate. She was not one of the 8, and she's overcompensating. That's what she's doing there by saying Trump should be speaker. But she doesn't have to worry. She's in one of the reddest districts in the country. So is Matt Gaetz. This guy is shitting his pants because all of those frontline Republicans, and there are more, right? More frontline Republicans in purple districts than
there's
Democrats.
About 18 that the Democrats are targeting.
Yeah.
As of like the beginning of this year, I think it was.
They're the ones that are probably, want to dig up as much dirt as humanly possible on Matt Gaetz. And even someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't helping their case by bringing Trump back into this conversation.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. And, I mean, say what you will about negative partisanship, but it's kind of like the last reliable way of getting anyone to support anything in this country. So you might as well just lean on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was a month ago. I got in the run up to the government shutdown. I don't know if it was for the debt deal or I think it was for this budget deal a couple of weeks ago. I got a call. I don't know from where. I can't remember the organization. Live person. Will you call, like I say, I'm a voter in District 19. Will you call Molinaro's office? Can we connect you to Molinaro's office and tell them that you want a budget deal? You don't want the government to shut down.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Sure.
And that type of pressure is why you saw McCarthy do what he did in that continuing resolution, because he's there and he's got like two essentially incentives that are at cross purposes.
Yep.
Keeping his job, keeping the Republican majority.
Yep.
I mean, on some level, he's pretty psyched because he just took Nancy Pelosi's old, like little tiny office. Apparently he was the one who said, clear out her stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's going to do fundraising and he doesn't have to really worry about holding things together. He can go just to install Republicans in there, and then he can go to K Street and monetize all that. But this is going to be a big problem. If there's the more pressure put on these 18, who are in like purplish districts or Biden won districts, they're going to go. And if they're going to try and push for some type of like get rid of the motion to vacate thing. And
McConnell weighed in on that, which was rare. He basically was like, this is bad. Get rid of that next time around.
And Gaetz said he would be into it if they adopted Ro Khanna's reforms, which, of course, one of which was literally something you need a constitutional amendment for. I mean, so.
Oh, God, yeah.
Is it possible that we don't have a Speaker of the House for weeks and weeks? And then is it possible that we have months and months of a government shutdown?
I mean, it's sort of, it's terrifyingly possible. I mean, I think that I think just based on everyone's sort of incentives, everyone's like pathologies, there's no coherent path for adults to show up in the room and say, cut all this out. Like it's time to get serious. Even if we don't end up with a prolonged sort of vacancy for the speaker, the coming shutdown could be incredibly protracted. Because I mean, we have seen what happens when you actually like try to avert it, or when you actually try to do something to help those frontline Republicans like you were talking about. And I think like the incentives of whoever gets the job will again be to keep the job, and that's gonna lead to I don't know. It's really hard to imagine a path out of this that's not incredibly painful.
What do you say to the argument that is made in some very, I wouldn't even say quarters, but maybe some eighths, that the Democrats should have helped out McCarthy with their votes?
Andrew Yang said that yesterday, by the way.
Of course. And so did Bill Scher and Matt Lewis and sort of like the sort of the professional centrist sort of like coalition. The Republicans are mad at the problem solvers, but what's your take on that? Like, I mean, if the government shutdown is inevitable, what's your take on that?
Well, I think you already sort of said this, but I think if we keep McCarthy, that's no guarantee we're gonna avoid the shutdown. That's really no guarantee we're gonna avoid the shutdown if we keep McCarthy. We're still heading for the same sort of climax.
If anything, it makes it maybe even more likely because he's now has to show his conservative bona fides, having been saved by the Democrats.
Having been saved by the Democrats, exactly. So he's got even more to prove in that scenario.
And there's more leverage against him too because of that damn motion to vacate. So that anyway,
Gates could have kept bringing it up over and over.
Could have just kept doing it, and so. Like that's just one sort of argument I think you can just put aside. But in terms of the is it the responsibility of Democrats to be the bigger party, to be the grown-ups? I mean, we spend a lot of time. We don't spend a lot of time, but people in the media spend a lot of time worrying about all of these poor like moderate Republicans who can't get back control of their party. But it's kind of like the argument should be put on them, like why they are not just joining with Democrats to support, again, a moderate Democratic speaker. Like that would just be the logical thing to do.
Yes.
It would really just be the completely coherent and logical thing to do if they have a problem with how the Republican majority is governing right now. Is like cross the aisle, and like there are plenty of conservative and moderate Democrats to choose from. If you want to put your country first above party.
I mean, there are, I don't know, is it 15, 18 of these, Republicans who come from like, sort of Biden districts, if you will. Yeah. All it takes is 5 of them.
Exactly. So yeah,
to vote for Hakeem Jeffries.
To vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Just a couple of them, and that's all it would take.
And they could do that. And also the amazing thing is that Kevin McCarthy is not held to account for not negotiating with the Democrats. I mean, I think but put aside like that reflexive, and it's sort of fascinating, right? Because people like you and I who've been doing this for a long time, we're sort of waiting to wonder if the Washington press would return to the sort of the mean, if you will, and sort of like create this posture of Democrats' job is to save Republicans from themselves. It really does seem to have snapped back in a big way in that regard, because Kevin McCarthy could have negotiated with the Democrats. Kevin McCarthy could have been a bipartisan hero.
He easily could have, and he could have, and that's the thing too. If he had wanted to find a way out of this, it would have made him incredibly popular in that segment of the press. Like he could have negotiated a sort of bipartisan solution for his own problem. But we've seen this with Republican political infighting for years and years and years now. Like they're not expected to or required to like do that kind of bipartisan option. They're always it's always treated as totally understandable that they have to negotiate with hostage takers on the far right and not just sort of throw them overboard.
And part of that has to do with what we basically said at the beginning was the Republican Party fundamentally has no interest in governing anyways. Mm-hmm. And so they don't, it is not it's not incumbent upon them to do anything that is helpful because that's their agenda, except we don't hear the same people who sort of put the responsibility on the Democrats because they want to govern full-throatedly or even hint at the idea that Republicans are there just to prevent the functioning of government.
Yes.
I mean, that's the asymmetry there. I mean, if there was like truth-telling by, I don't know, pick your New York Times reporter or whomever it is, of like Republicans want to obstruct government and Democrats don't. They want to do stuff for people. That's why they have more of an obligation. If it was framed in that way, at least there would be an opportunity for voters to respond in that way.
Well, it's funny because that's the premise that underlies a lot of the analysis, but it's not just spoken aloud in those terms. Because I think you're totally right, because If you made it a lot clearer in those terms, it would be clearer for voters what they're voting for. But the premise is that, like, because you guys have decided you actually want things to function, you have to be held solely responsible for whether or not things function. Which it's a raw deal, right? But like, you're the party of things broadly working. So if anything goes wrong, it's because you didn't try hard enough to make it work. But the other party, if you are the party of breaking shit, then, like, obviously you can't be held responsible for your own actions when you break everything. But
they never articulate that second part.
Exactly. Yes.
Let's just move. We don't have too much time left, but we're in a weird situation in terms of, like, what's shaping up for 2024. There does not seem to be Bobby Kennedy is about to leave the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. The only other person that I'm aware of that's in the Democratic primary is Marian Williamson. And she has, I mean, just to be frank, had trouble maintaining a campaign. It's unclear to me that she's going to be on any ballots, right. Any states. It's interesting. My whole plan was to interview, to basically interview all the people sort of, arguably on the left. Like, I mean, Kennedy to me he's been running as a libertarian candidate more than anything else. But certainly Marian Williamson and Cornell West. I mean, in particular, I have a lot of respect for. But over the past, like, I don't know, because I was saying we'll do this in September, and then by the time we get to September, RFK is basically running a Koch brothers campaign.
Yeah.
Marian Williamson has lost 4 campaign managers, and like there's literally an open letter by I think 40.
Some of her staffers just saying don't donate to her.
This is absolutely wrong. Yeah. And Cornell West has switched parties now 2 times and is now running as of like yesterday as an independent.
Right.
And yet, I mean, I don't think, I think like when we talk about RFK and Cornell West, and really even more so, no labels. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a tight race. I think any way you slice it between Trump and Biden. And if there are like 3, and no labels may have the biggest impact.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't need much of an impact to sway this election. It seems, highly problematic. I mean, there's large discontent with Biden as the nominee, from what I can tell, mostly about his age. Yeah. I think like obviously there are a lot of things in this border wall thing is reprehensible, and the Venezuelan thing is reprehensible. But I think for the most part, it's a function of his age, and it's scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the whole situation sucks because I think like, again, we're in a position where the election really is going to be a lot closer than it ought to be, in a large part because of the way Biden ran, his first race, and sort of the implicit and often explicit argument that he made at the time was like, I think he would deny, I'm a bridge, right? I'm a caretaker. I'm a bridge. I know I'm old, but like you gotta have me to get rid of Trump. And you end up with an electorate that's not in love with the guy, and regardless of his accomplishments, like there's not a lot of, I don't think there's just a ton of affection there for him anymore. So we wouldn't be in this position if someone else had won last time, if Biden had run a different kind of race last time, if he had decided this time that he should give the reins to someone else. Like, so I don't know. I put a lot of responsibility on the Democratic Party for engineering this accidentally engineering a much sort of closer race with a much weaker candidate than there should have been. But yeah, I think in particular, the no label stuff, like that looks a lot like a sort of intentional, well-funded campaign to just screw with the election. Like, it just looks like that. And I think with the way ballot access works in this country, and it's so arcane and needs so much organization and money that, like, to run a campaign, that ends up having that kind of an impact, you need a lot of support. That's not like grassroots single donor support, right? Someone's got to be behind you. So, I think there are people taking advantage of the situation to just try to, I think, essentially just cause trouble is what is going on here.
I mean, I'm thinking back to the first Clinton election in '92, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, these numbers aren't exact, but Clinton got like 45%.
Yeah.
George Herbert Walker Bush got maybe 43%.
Yeah.
And Ross Perot, I think, must have gotten the rest, essentially. It's not inconceivable to me. Ross Perot was extremely wealthy. And
exactly. Yeah.
And was sort of now he left the race, he got back into the race, he kept leaving the race, and I mean it was very weird. But it was also at a time where like there was no social media. There was, they focused on him quite a bit. He was on Larry King very famously. I think there was even a debate that he had.
He could buy airtime. He could also literally buy airtime for himself.
Yes, and when you bought airtime in those days, you commanded a lot of attention. It wasn't like today where it's like somebody could buy an hour and have no one would even notice. But it's not inconceivable to me we could get something like that. Like I could, RFK Jr. could get a decent size of the vote, and it could come from both Republicans and Democrats. But nevertheless, it seems like a very hairy situation to me, and scary in that respect. And it's interesting. Ralph Nader, of all people, has come out now publicly and essentially endorsed Joe Biden.
Yeah. That's funny.
Which is amazing to me. And I don't know. The other amazing thing about it is like it's unclear to me the ideological difference of all the people running here. Like Cornell West seems to be running his campaign. If there's one message that I have gleaned from his campaign, I mean, he has all sorts of other, I think, ideas that I appreciate. But the thing that they're top lining is defeat the duopoly.
Right.
Which is like, first off, there's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. You don't even have a party apparatus.
Right.
But like, if you wanted to defeat the duopoly, the best way to do that is like to create a model like the Working Families Party, which is actually in some states running third-party candidates on a local level and been building, but it takes a long time. You're not going to beat the duopoly by getting a 5% ballot access. Because
that's actually, and that's something I don't know. It's about that argument I find really cynical because you can't actually believe it sincerely that a third-party presidential campaign is going to have any effect on the two-party system in the end, no matter how successful it is. And the proof of that is Perot. The proof of that is everyone in history. And because if you actually do care about, because I think the two-party system, the way it's enshrined in American politics is a real shame and leads to a lot of bad outcomes. But the way to end that is to actually like defeat it at the local level. And because that's the only place you can actually get started. That's the only place you can get started in this country. Like go somewhere where the Democratic Party is weak or the Republican Party is weak. And that's where you can actually start to build that kind of movement. Just jumping into presidential race is just absurd.
Yeah. There was a lot more I wanted to talk about, but we're out of time and we'll have to catch up. I don't think much of this is going to change. I mean, we could be in the same exact situation, 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get all the same subjects when I come back in a month.
Slightly more despondent.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex Pareene, always a pleasure. Folks, check out The Politics of Everything, where all of your major podcasts are served. And, of course, contributing editor to The New Republic. Alex, thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.